News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam, and now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Sunday, December 7th, 2025. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 513 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Shout out to any of our Southwest Ohio listeners on 513 Day here, or 513 episode, or however you want to call it. Good to be with you all. Sorry not to record this immediately after the game. If it's any solace, I'm still drinking a Diet Mountain Dew, even though it's not 2 a.m. In a hotel room somewhere. But I am here. It's Sunday evening. And as I mentioned on the last podcast, it was going to be a challenge to get something recorded Saturday night, just given the fact I was flying home and Chicago traffic being what it is and trying to get stuff done before the flight. And it just didn't work out. And I was all geared up to record something at O'Hare, and I couldn't find a place, and then I kind of ran out of time, and it didn't happen. The L concourse or terminal or whatever is under construction. It was kind of a mess. Couldn't even find a working power outlet for most of the time. So anyway, apologies that this didn't get out to you sooner. But we do have quite a few things to talk about here because on Saturday afternoon inside Welsh Ryan Arena, Ohio State shook off a 1-point loss at Pitt in its previous game, led the game for 20 minutes and 25 seconds, trailed by 9, built an 8-point lead, and then hung on to win 86-82 at Northwestern to move the Buckeyes to 7-1 overall, 1-0 in the Big Ten, dropping Northwestern to 5-4 overall and 0-2 in the Big Ten. There were 2 stars in this game. One was expected, and I think one was probably not. Nick Martinelli had 32 points to lead Northwestern. He was a monster. It was incredibly difficult for anybody to really get a handle on him. He's a phenomenal player, incredibly talented scorer. Just a tough go all around for Ohio State trying to combat him. But the Buckeyes, in a game where John Mobley did return, despite the ankle injury, Christoph Tilley played despite his unspecified lower body injury or lower leg injury. Both guys were in the starting lineup. Ohio State only rolled 8 deep in this game. And one of the players that we talked a lot about on the last episode of the podcast, who had gone scoreless at Pitt, played fewer than 10 minutes in that game. Well, Brandon Noel came out and just took control of this game. The Wright State transfer, 6th-year forward, led Ohio State with a season-high 29 points, also led the Buckeyes with 7 rebounds, played 35 minutes and 8 seconds, 13 of 15 from the floor, 0 of 1 from 3, so he was 13 of 14 from 2. Obviously, the Brandon Noel game, all caps, capital T, the capital B, Brandon, capital N, Noel, capital G game. He was a force early, he was a force often. He didn't go more than 3 minutes and 30 seconds at any point in the second half without scoring. On a night when Ohio State as a team shot 57.4%, the Buckeyes were only 4 of 14 from 3. And one of the stats that really jumped out to me in this one is that the Buckeyes put up 86 points against the Wildcats and only made 4 3-pointers. The 2-point field goal percentage continues to be elite. The Buckeyes continue to finish at the rim at a really high rate. Ohio State had 24 assists in this game. Assisted on 24 of 35 made field goals. A lot to like about how Ohio State's offense settled in and consistently generated high percentage looks against a Northwestern team that is very good at keeping you from taking the threes that you want to take. They have a pretty good 3-point defense. And Ohio State still managed to put up 86 points in spite of that. Now, certainly flip side, Buckeyes give up 82 to Northwestern. And this is obviously, it's a talented Northwestern team. Anytime you've got Nick Martinelli's the kind of guy, anytime you have him, you've got a chance. But the Wildcats are 5-4. So 82 points marks the second most of the season for Northwestern. The Wildcats had 110 against Cleveland State back on November 10th. They play with a little bit more tempo than maybe what would maybe historically or traditionally think about with Northwestern, but this was a back and forth battle for long stretches, and it did feel like there was a couple of moments where you just said, okay, this is going to be Northwestern's game, but Ohio State, despite trailing by 4 going into the half and really having a poor close to the first half and open to the second half, found a way to get it done. So we're going to dive into more of that here in a minute. Looking at some other numbers that really do jump out on the box score here. Bruce Thornton, 17 points, didn't make a 3, 0 of 1 from 3. Ohio State, like I said, 4 of 14. He finishes with 17 points, 4 rebounds. He drew 6 fouls, 10 assists, no turnovers. That's a lot. So Ohio State finished, again, 24 assists, 11 turnovers. But Thornton with a double-double at 17 and 10. Mari Bynum had 11 off the bench. He also had 5 rebounds. Colin White was impactful in this game, more impactful than maybe his stat line would show. He had 4 points, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, 3 assists in 17 minutes and 42 seconds. I did talk to Colin after the game. Shout out to all of you listening and all of you that support the work that we do at the Dispatch. We're the only media outlet at this game that covers Ohio State. I've had one-on-ones with Jake Diebler and with Brandon Noel and with Colin White, and you've been able to read some of that stuff by now at dispatch.com. As of me recording this, I have not written my Brandon Noel story for Monday morning, but it will be up Monday morning. So by the time you're listening to this, I would encourage you to go read that, because there's a lot of ground to dive into when it comes to Brandon Noel, the start of his season, his last game, and now this game. And we'll talk about some of that again here in a moment. But in their limited somewhat availability, John Mobley Jr. had 8 points. Like I said, he did start. It was 3 of 7 from the floor, 1 of 5 from 3. He played 24 minutes, 22 seconds. Didn't really do anything in the second half, as Ohio State leaned pretty heavily on Colin White. And Gabe Cupps played 15 and a half minutes. He hit a 3-pointer. Devin Royal had 10 points, 4 rebounds. He had moments where he just was, you didn't really kind of notice him a whole lot on the court, and he did deal with some foul trouble. He had a couple in the first half, but he hit a massive 3-pointer late in the game from the left corner and had a couple of buckets down the stretch to help Ohio State fend off the Wildcats' late push. And then Christoph Tilley had 4 points in 17 minutes, 57 seconds. He was 1 of 5 from the floor, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers. We're going to talk about the two of them here in a minute and kind of where they are. But Ohio State then, held Northwestern to, well, I wouldn't say held, but Northwestern shot 47.5% from the floor. The Wildcats were 8 of 24 from 3. That was a big thing in the first half. Northwestern hit, while closing the first half on a 14-2 run, Northwestern hit 4 3-pointers during that stretch, and the Wildcats only hit 8 for the entirety of the game. But that really gave the home team and the home crowd a little bit of fire there going into halftime. But Ohio State did find a way, like I said, to turn it around. So the Buckeyes now will turn their sights forward to a top 15 matchup against Illinois. Fighting Illini come to Columbus on Tuesday night. That will be game 3 of this 5-game. Let's see what Ohio State's got stretch. Started with the Pitt game, and then Northwestern, Illinois, and then Ohio State goes to Cleveland on Saturday to play West Virginia, and then we'll go to Atlanta the following Saturday to go play North Carolina. So we've got this stretch here of 5 straight games against high major competition. We're going to learn a lot more about Ohio State. By the time we're sitting here 2 weeks from today, we will know a lot more about these Buckeyes after having been tested by high-level competition for a significant stretch. That run of games will end when Ohio State then hosts Grambling State on December 23rd. And then after that, it's all Big Ten play with 1 Virginia game sprinkled in there. So we're going to get into all that here in a second. Before we do, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you're subscribed, you automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars. Please consider telling a friend. thanks to anyone who's taken the time to do all those things. It is sincerely appreciated. And I love getting to do this and talk some of this stuff out. And this one, like I said, a little bit different because we're not immediately recording after a game like I try to do. But that's just kind of how the travel shook out. So we're going to talk about Brandon Noel in just a second. For just like context here of just, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth for a second, which is that one, it is far too early in the season to really be diving into, well, where are they in the rankings and the analytics and, what does this mean for seeding purposes or to get an at-large bid in the tournament? Like, we talk about that stuff. I don't want to make too much of a deal of it in early December. It just doesn't, like, there's so much more ahead, and Ohio State's going to have a million opportunities between now and the end of the season to write the story of what it wants to be this year and what the season will be. But it is worth pointing out where Ohio State was at the beginning of the week and where it is now after this result. And I think this speaks to how a lot of us viewed this game. For even though everything I just said, it's early, they still got 19 Big Ten games left. They still have 22 games against high major teams on the schedule. Like, we are just past the quarter pole of the season. There's a long way to go in all this stuff. But it was pretty evident that Pitt loss was having an impact on the resume. And Ohio State, in the initial net rankings that published last Monday, 60th. That's rough. And the Pitt loss was a quad 3 loss. The Notre Dame win was only a quad 3 win. There wasn't a whole lot there on the resume. And some of that's a byproduct of just the way the schedules shook out, all the bye games early. But now after this win, the win against the Wildcats it's a quad 1 win for Ohio State. And then for anyone that's not intimately familiar with it, I won't get into all of the details, but you want to stack as many quad 1 and quad 2 wins as you can. That's the stuff the committee will really look at. And you want to avoid those bad losses in quad 3 or quad 4. So the Pitt loss being a quad 3 loss, that's going to hold back the resume a bit no matter what. But by beating Northwestern on the road, this was a quad 1 game, and Ohio State has jumped 20 spots since last Monday and jumped 15 spots overnight with the win. So Ohio State's now 40th in the net, which is much more on par with, one of the, getting one of the final maybe at-large bids, putting you in position to be selected for the tournament. And again, this is one game. Illinois will be a quad 1 game. I don't know about West Virginia yet. North Carolina will be a quad 1. Like, there's a lot more opportunities ahead. But not only did this feel important on the resume early, but just from the court of public perception. And I talked about this in the post-game video that I posted to Instagram and to TikTok, but certainly losing to Pitt left a certain impression on like what this team is and what the season could be. And that stuff is all still being written, but this was an important response for Ohio State. And it wasn't perfect. There were stretches where they couldn't get stops. And certainly, you give up 82 points. That's not ideal, to say the least. And you let a guy like talented as he may be, like, it didn't seem like anybody could really take Nick Martinelli out of what he was trying to do. He just was seemingly everywhere at all times. And Ohio State didn't really have a whole lot of answers there. And so I think some of the defensive questions that we have about this team persist. And it's going to be fascinating to see what Ohio State does against Illinois on Tuesday. Now, Ohio State's not played anybody like this yet. The Illini are 11th at KenPom. Like I said, a top 15 team. Right now, Illinois is 8th in adjusted offensive efficiency and 17th in adjusted defensive efficiency. The Illini are 7-2, just beat Tennessee on Saturday in a neutral court game. The two losses are neutral court losses to Alabama by 4 and to UConn by 13. Otherwise, the win against Tennessee, win against Texas Tech, that was at home. It's a talented Illinois team, and this will be the first true road game of the season for the Illini, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Brandon Noel, and let's talk about what this last week was like for him. So you look at Ohio State's loss at Pitt, and I'm just looking at the win probability chart here on KenPom right now. That's bonkers. So Brandon Noel against Pitt, 9 minutes. He missed 2 threes, did not score, did not grab a rebound, had an assist, had a turnover. That was it. And we talked on the podcast, like Ohio State on a night when like John Mobley got hurt, where Christoph Tilley again, didn't quite look like himself, or at least what we've seen in the early going of the season. Like, you can't have a starter play 9 minutes and not score. And it turns out that, like, as the week got started, Jake Diebler and Brandon Noel had some direct sort of conversations about all that. And Diebler told me, he said, we talked about it a lot on the way home from Pitt because it felt like we needed to be better offensively. And where was our missing production? Well, it felt like he was a guy that could answer that for us to some degree. So they talked about clarity. They talked about areas where he could be aggressive. And Diebler said it was amazing when we started the conversation. We were aligned on what he needed. He said, I think it speaks to his maturity that it wasn't anything other than, Coach, I want to help this team win. I know I can do more. Help me understand where I need to do that. So we talked through that. And apparently he had an unbelievable week in practice, like to the point where Diebler moved him to the second team to make him go against the first team to continue to bring some more of that out. When I asked Brandon Noel about that, he said it was very honest. Here's what I need from you. Here's what I want you to do. And here's what you can do to help us. He said, I took that and ran with it. You can tell me whatever, and I'm going to listen to it and try to do that. Usually coaches want what's best for the team. So he was telling me something I could help us do. He said it was a very honest conversation. I really appreciate that. I said, so what were like some of the things that you guys talked about? He said, really just be more aggressive, be more physical, use the body I have and the age and experience and skill set that I have and be physical. And I thought this was a great quote. And this is one of the things I've enjoyed getting to know Brandon since the spring. But he said, to be completely blunt and honest, just play better. That's really what it boils down to. So that's what I did. Now, this is a guy who has scored at a high level and rebounded at a high level all 3 years at Wright State. And certainly we've seen Wright State is not a direct comparison to Ohio State. There's growing pains there. There's all those things. We saw it with Tanner Holden. But one of the things that has stood out to me about Brandon Noel from day one is that he's a different type of player than that. He has a Big Ten type body. He has a multi-year consistent track record of being a high level contributor. And everyone that I talked to that would like watch practices this summer or that was around the team in the fall would talk about like how he was going to be an impact player because he just wanted to play at Ohio State and to win at Ohio State. And they said like that, it doesn't mean he's going to lead the team in scoring and things like that. But like he was bought in for like the right things and that Ohio State meant something to him. And I wrote a story about Brandon during the summer. I spoke with his former coach at Wright State, Scott Nagy, and we talked about it in the last podcast. I don't need to go too deep into it, but like there was a stretch during his first year at Wright State where they had a road trip. He should have been league player of the week that week for his performances against Milwaukee and Green Bay. And then like 2-3 weeks later, both those teams came to Wright State and he was a non-factor. And so we talked about like the maturation process and the understanding that like, this is what you can be every night. And so I've sort of had that in the back of my head as we've looked at some of these early season performances for Brandon, where you go back to, he had 8 in the opener. He had 4 against Purdue Fort Wayne, 18 against Appalachian State. He had 18 and 11 in that game. And then against Notre Dame, he didn't score, didn't take a shot, only had 1 rebound, did play 19 minutes, but was a non-factor in that game. Had 8 points against Western Michigan, had 9 against Mount St. Mary's, and then, again, doesn't score against Pitt. So that's 2 games against high major opponents to this point of the season, and he had 0 points on 2 total shots and had grabbed 1 rebound in 28 total minutes of playing time. So now he goes out against Northwestern, and just you can see like when he gets the ball in the paint around the rim, like he is an automatic finisher. It just looks very easy for him when he has the ball near the rim. And sometimes that's coming on. He makes the right cut. He gets a good pass. He's in the right spot. Sometimes it just comes from what we saw in this game, like them getting him the ball and letting him attack. And he was aggressive. He took some of those opportunities. He didn't overthink a 3-pointer. I'm a little surprised. I mean, he's only taken 7 3-pointers this season. He's 2 of 7 at this point, but 13 of 14 from 2, and just consistently finding his way to the rim, consistently putting Ohio State in position where, okay, they know they can get the ball to him and he can do something. And he's not going to get 29 and 7 every night going forward. And it was even funny because I was thinking about how like Jake Diebler did say something about how like they basically feel between Devin Royal, Christoph Tilley, John Mobley, and Bruce Thornton, that those four on any given night are probably going to be their leading scorer. And what ended up happening in this game is when, Bruce Thornton ended up having a really good night as a distributor, 17 points on 12 shots. He only got 1 3-point attempt and he missed it. It looked like it was going to fall, but it didn't. And you get 8 from Mobley coming back from injury. You get 10 from Devin Royal. Brandon Noel stepped up in a huge way in this game. And not only does that sort of help Ohio State solidify itself as it heads into this more difficult portion of the schedule now, and it takes a level up in competition here, but it certainly validates, I think, some things for Brandon Noel, who had not done anything of this magnitude to this point of the season and could have gone the other way. I mean, it was fair to wonder, like after the Pitt game, you're going, okay, like does Diebler need to shake up the lineup a little bit? Do you bring Brandon Noel off the bench? Do you put Amari Bynum in his place? Bynum he's been solid. Seemingly he has like a highlight every game, and is really at this point like the team's most consistent producer off the bench, and a guy that I think can like go get a couple of buckets off the bench. Diebler said that like that's important. They certainly need more production from some of the bench guys, and it was fair to wonder, like coming into this game, like would you want to make that switch anyway and bring Brandon Noel off the bench if he's not scoring like this? So I think this answered a lot of questions, at least for the here and now, about how impactful he can be and what sort of resilience Ohio State can show, because this game did feel Pitt-esque in the second half, and the Buckeyes came out and played better early. They didn't dig themselves a significant hole like they did against the Panthers. And Ohio State stretch that really did stand out to me, like down the stretch in the first half. Ohio State was up 38-32 with about 3.5 minutes to go, and ended up going into the half down 44-40. So yeah, that's a 12-2 run from the home team that was buoyed by multiple turnovers from Ohio State and a bunch of threes from a Northwestern team that really hasn't shown that it can consistently knock down shots from deep. Difficult stretch for Ohio State, and then you're thinking, okay, well, they're down 4 going into the second half, and then Northwestern got I'm working on his name, but Angelo Ciaravino, but the dude like opened the second half, got a just unbelievably wide open dunk on a drive and kick from Jaden Reed. Next possession, he got the ball to the right corner, and it looked like Devin Royal and Brandon Noel were over there, and both of them were like, who's supposed to guard him? And nobody did, and he just drove right in and slammed it. It was interesting. Then I looked over, and Diebler immediately pointed to the bench and like made like a pull him motion, and Tilley ended up being the first sub after that. So I'm not sure exactly what happened on that play, but there you go. You're down 4. You just given up a 12-2 run, and then Northwestern scores on its first 2 possessions on essentially wide open dunks. And so Ohio State's now down by 8. It's biggest deficit of the game until that point. And then Thornton scores. Thornton dishes to Brandon Noel for a quick dunk. Ohio State cuts it back to 4. But then two more consecutive buckets rather for Northwestern. It's back to 8. Thornton scores inside, down to 6. It gets back to 9, or it gets up to 9, and that's the highest deficit that Ohio State would face. It was 57-48, and this came on a 3-pointer from Jaden Reed against Ohio State's zone defense. And this is where you're going, okay, like is this what they are? Is this who they are? Like, are they? I've seen this game go sideways in this gym. Northwestern hadn't won 4 in a row against Ohio State since the late 1920s. And the Wildcats came in with a 3-game winning streak against Ohio State. And you're just thinking, is that where this is headed? But then you have this stretch, Ohio State down 8. Brandon Noel dishes to Amari Bynum for a lay-in on an alley-oop. And then Ohio State goes down 9 on the 3-pointer. Brandon Noel, this is a big possession. Noel gets the ball underneath, scores, misses the and one, but Amari Bynum gets the rebound, and then Thornton scores in the paint. So 4-point possession. Ohio State cuts it to 5. But then Martinelli scores, and then Brandon Noel drives and scores. So it's a 5-point deficit. Then Brandon Noel gets a block, and Thornton gets fouled at the other end, hits 2 free throws. Martinelli gets fouled, hits 2 free throws. They're back down 5. Thornton drives, and then Brandon Noel scores. It's a goaltend, but it actually still win in anyway. Pulls Ohio State within 1. Then with 10:24 to go, Brandon Noel's bucket puts Ohio State ahead, 62-61. It's a drive from the right corner. It was all like Brandon Noel and Bruce Thornton, and it allowed Ohio State to not let the game go sideways from them in the early moments, and it put Ohio State in a position where things started to feel, I'm sure for Ohio State, a little uncomfortably familiar. So with about 4 minutes to go, Ohio State's up 5, which is essentially exactly where the Buckeyes were against Pitt. And to me, the big moments here, you had a Devin Royal 3-pointer in the left corner that, well, let me back up. It was 76-73 after Martinelli 3-pointer, and then Devin Royal finds Brandon Noel, so it's 78-73 at this point. There's a little more than 3 minutes, or excuse me, a little more than 2 minutes to go. So Ohio State's now pushed it to a 2-possession game. Martinelli misses a shot, and Devin Royal battled for the rebound, grabs this rebound. I starred that as one of my notable plays. And then Ohio State comes up the court. They get the ball to Devin Royal in the corner. He buries a 3. Ohio State's up 8. Northwestern calls timeout. And I mean, the Wildcats would keep fighting, and they did. They got to within 1 with 28 seconds left. But then Thornton hit 2 free throws. Tilly hit a free throw. Ohio State did enough to finish it out. But it did feel for a moment a little uncomfortably familiar to that Pitt game. But Ohio State in this one did enough and played well enough down the stretch to make this one stand up. Buckeyes did it with an 8-man rotation, and I asked Diebler after the game, how banged up, or did you know what you could get from Mobley? Did you know what you could get from Tilly? Our guard dog is barking for some odd reason right now. As an aside, we joke that she can see dragons. That's what when there's nothing outside and she barks, we joke that there are dragons outside that she's protecting us from. But back to the basketball here. So, like I said, I asked Diebler about the availability for the two of those guys and kind of how they came through the week. And he said that one of the best things was that they were both able to show improvement as the week went on. And they feel like that, those issues, they're moving past them. They're not, trying to find this quote right now. Here's a quote. He said, "We'll get a read after this, but it feels like we came out in a good place for those two. They've progressed health-wise since the Pitt game. We've got to continue to do that, but they'll benefit from being able to be in practice every day, play a full practice, not be limited reps." He said those guys have spent a lot of time to be able to play. Thankful because obviously they didn't play their best games, but both of them stayed ready at the end of the game. So I think it's obvious, Mobley's not 100%. He didn't look 100%, although first possession of the game, he scored on a drive from the top of the circle, got in the lane, got the ball to his left hand and finished with a left-handed layup. And he had to go right off of that injured right ankle and no hesitation, looked like his normal self. So I thought that was a positive early sign for him. He did only attempt one shot in the second half, played 9 minutes, and it seemed like he was more a decoy, honestly, than anything else. And I'm sure some of it was trying to combat Martinelli too. I mean, multiple guys were getting switched onto him. That could have played a role in some of that too. But what's as interesting to me as anything right now is I think we obviously know with Mobley, what does he look like when he's healthy and how soon can he be back to being as close to fully healthy as possible. Tilly, we're still kind of figuring out. And after a really strong start to his Ohio State career, he's had some struggles these last couple of games that I don't know yet. I hesitate to say that it's level of competition because he played so well against Notre Dame. But his numbers have taken a nosedive these last couple of games. You go back to the Mount St. Mary's game, and he played the first half, sat out the second half. But going into the Pitt game, he was 25 of 32 from 2-point range. 25, 32, so that's 78.1%. So now against Pitt and now against Northwestern, he's 2 of 11 from 2-point range. That's 18.2%. He was also second on the team in assists, and he has just 1 in these last 2 games. It just doesn't seem like he doesn't look like the same player at this moment, and they have not specified what the lower leg injury is or how much that is impacting him. It was kind of an afterthought mentioned at the Notre Dame game that Tilly wasn't fully healthy either. So, certainly something to keep our eye on as the season goes on. And this is going to be a huge game for him against Illinois, given the size that the Illini will bring. But like I've had some people asking me, is this a concern? Like, is Tilly just not going to be able to combat like the size of the Big Ten? I just think he's not healthy, and we'll see like if what the blip is, what the trend is, or what like the reality is. But he doesn't look like the same player that maybe he was in the early going, and his 3-point shot also has not fallen this year. Now he's never been like a lights out 3-point shooter. He only took 2 his freshman year at Santa Clara, and he missed them both. And he was 4 of 13 his sophomore year. That's 30%, 31%. And then last season he was 17 of 54, so that's 31.5%. And this season he's 4 of 25, so that's only 16%. He hit 1 against Mount St. Mary's, he hit 1 against Western Michigan. So he's not made multiple threes yet in a game. He was 0 of 6 against Appalachian State, 0 of 3 against Notre Dame, 0 of 2 against Pitt. He didn't attempt one at Northwestern. He definitely does not look super confident taking a 3-pointer at this moment. But the numbers would tell us that like there are some 3-point makes that are in there for him. And if he shot roughly 31% in his last 2 seasons of significant playing time at Santa Clara, if he shot 31% and he's shooting 16% right now, it would stand to reason that number is going to rise at some point. I don't think he's going to shoot 16% from this season, but they do need him to get back to a little bit more consistent level of contribution, because as we talked about many times in the offseason and throughout the fall, like he's a unique player, and Ohio State doesn't have a like-for-like replacement on this roster. We didn't see Ivan Yagovin at all against Northwestern. Diebler kept it to an 8-man rotation. So we never saw Tayson Chapman. We didn't see Matthew Griachich. It was the 5 starters plus Bynum, Colin White, and Gabe Cupps. And simply put, like this team just needs they need Christoph Tilly to contribute, and to contribute more along the lines of you look at some of these early numbers. I mean, Notre Dame game, 18 points, 4 rebounds. The Western Michigan game, 17 points, only 2 rebounds, but 7 assists. Like his ability to distribute and to help facilitate offense is critical for this team. And again, on a night when they only made 4 3-pointers and Christoph Tilly only makes 1 field goal and John Mobley only makes 1 3-pointer and Bruce Thornton doesn't make any, to get to 86 points and to win on the road, that's a positive development for Ohio State, to be sure. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up there because it's, like I said, it's Sunday evening here. We will be talking to Jake Diebler on Monday at about 1 o'clock. He has his radio show from 12 to 1, and then we have interviews after that. And then the next game is Tuesday. So I've still got some more stuff to write, and there's plenty to get into. I'll be podcasting again on Tuesday night, breaking down whatever we see against Illinois. Because I am curious to see what this Ohio State defense can do against Illinois. I mean, I feel like there could be a lot of points inside the Schottenstein Center on Tuesday night, but this will be the biggest test for Ohio State. Honestly, as you look at the rankings right now, this is Ohio State's highest rated opponent until the Buckeyes play at number 1 Michigan on January 23rd. Big game. I'm excited to see how this plays out and to see how Ohio State matches up with the Illini. So I'll have lots of stories between now and when that game tips at dispatch.com. But you probably already knew that if you're still listening to this podcast. So like I said, I'm going to wrap this one up and get some writing done. But as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardy@dispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for getting this out to you all. I'll be back with you Tuesday night after the Illini game. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.